I appreciate Finland government for allowing me to speak for another time. Let me begin with a statement that many people in high offices do not want to hear. A statement that will make some uncomfortable and restless tonight. The continued detention of Nnamdi Kanu is not about law. It is about fear. It is fear of a people who have awakened. It is fear of a movement that refuses to die. It is fear of a nation that has discovered its voice. For years, they have tried to silence us. They have tried to divide us along ethnic, religious, and political lines. They have tried to weaken our resolve and break our spirit. But today, Biafra is still standing, still speaking, still rising, still dreaming, still believing. And that is why they are afraid. Because once a people understand their worth, once a people discover their strength, once a people unite around a shared vision, no chain can hold them forever. Recently, we witnessed another attempt to delay justice. Justice Omotosho rejected the transfer of our leader, Nnamdi Kanu, from Sokoto to Abuja. Many may see this as just another legal decision, just another court ruling among many. But we know better. We understand the deeper meaning behind it. We understand what it represents. It represents hesitation. It represents uncertainty. It represents fear of transparency. It represents a system struggling to face the truth. Why block a process that could bring openness? Why reject a move that could improve access and fairness? Why frustrate a case that demands clarity? Why keep a man isolated when justice thrives in openness? Because when justice is done in the open, lies cannot survive.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and fellow advocates for justice and human dignity. It is both an honor and a profound responsibility to stand before you today at this Afrosite Forum. I come to you with a message that echoes across continents, a message that speaks to the universal human yearning for freedom, dignity, and self-determination. Today, I present to you a speech delivered by Simon Ekpa, a voice that has emerged from the struggles of the Biafran people, a voice that refuses to be silenced, a voice that challenges injustice, and a voice that demands the world's attention. Before I delve into the substance of this powerful address, I want to express gratitude to the Finnish government for providing this platform. In an era where many voices are suppressed, where dissent is often criminalized, and where speaking truth to power can cost one's freedom or even life, it is remarkable that we can gather here freely to discuss matters of justice and human rights. This speaks volumes about the values that Finland represents, and it reminds us that the struggle for freedom is not confined to any single nation or people. It is a universal human endeavor. Simon Ekpa begins his speech with a statement that he acknowledges will disturb those in positions of power. He declares that the continued detention of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, is not fundamentally about law or legal procedures, but about fear. This is a profound assertion that cuts through the legal rhetoric and political justifications that often obscure the real motivations behind state actions. What kind of fear is Ekpa referring to? It is the fear that governments often experience when faced with a population that has awakened to consciousness of its own rights and dignity. It is the fear that arises when people who have been marginalized, oppressed, or ignored suddenly discover their collective voice and refuse to remain silent. It is the fear that no amount of military might or legal maneuvering can ultimately suppress an idea whose time has come. Ekpa speaks of years of attempts to silence, confuse, and divide the Biafran people along ethnic, religious, and political lines. This is a familiar pattern in many societies where divide-and-rule tactics have been employed to maintain control over populations that might otherwise unite around common interests. Yet, despite these efforts, Ekpa proclaims that Biafra remains standing, speaking, rising, dreaming, and believing. This persistence itself becomes a form of resistance, a declaration that the human spirit cannot be permanently broken by oppression. A central focus of Ekpa's speech is a recent judicial decision by Justice Omotosho, who rejected the transfer of Nnamdi Kanu from Sokoto to Abuja. To the casual observer, this might appear to be merely another procedural decision in a complex legal case. However, Ekpa interprets this ruling through a different lens as a symptom of systemic reluctance to allow transparency and fair process. He poses several penetrating questions. Why block a process that could bring openness? Why reject a move that could improve access and fairness? Why frustrate a case that demands clarity? Why keep a man isolated when justice thrives in openness? These questions are not merely rhetorical. They point to a fundamental principle of justice, that it must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. Justice performed in shadows, behind bureaucratic walls, in locations far from public scrutiny, raises legitimate concerns about whether justice is truly being served. Ekpa suggests that there is a deliberate strategy to bury this case in paperwork, to lose it in bureaucracy, to trap it in endless procedures until people become tired, distracted, and discouraged. This is a pattern that has been observed in many political cases throughout history. The use of legal processes not to achieve justice, but to delay, frustrate, and ultimately deny it. The law, which should be a protector of rights, becomes instead an instrument of oppression when it is manipulated for political purposes. One of the most moving aspects of Ekpa's speech is his emphasis on memory. He declares that Biafrans do not forget. They remember their history, their suffering, their sacrifices, their heroes, their tears, and their dreams. This emphasis on memory is crucial because it speaks to the way communities maintain their identity and purpose across generations. Historical memory serves several functions in liberation movements. First, it provides a sense of continuity and identity, connecting current struggles to past experiences. Second, it honors those who have sacrificed for the cause, ensuring that their suffering was not in vain. Third, it provides moral justification for continuing the struggle, as abandoning the cause would be seen as betraying those who came before. When Ekpa speaks of remembering dreams, he is referring to the dream of freedom, dignity, self-respect, and ultimately, Biafra. These are not abstract concepts, but deeply felt aspirations that have sustained a people through decades of marginalization and struggle. The dream of Biafra represents more than territorial sovereignty. It represents the hope for a society where the Igbo people and others who identify with the Biafran cause can live with dignity, govern themselves according to their own values, and control their own resources and destiny. Ekpa makes a crucial point when he says that Nnamdi Kanu is not just a man, but a symbol. This is an important distinction because it helps explain why his detention has not weakened the movement, but has, in some ways, strengthened it. Symbols have power that transcends the individuals who embody them. They represent ideas, values, and aspirations that cannot be imprisoned. When authorities arrested Kanu, they may have believed that removing the leader would cause the movement to collapse. This reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of social movements, which are not dependent on single individuals, but are rooted in collective grievances, shared identities, and common aspirations. As Ekpa eloquently states, you cannot imprison an idea, you cannot jail a dream, you cannot silence destiny, and you cannot lock up truth. This understanding transforms Kanu's detention from a tactical victory for the Nigerian government into a strategic liability. Rather than silencing opposition, it has created a martyr figure around whom the movement can rally. It has made visible the very injustices that the movement claims to oppose. It has drawn international attention to issues that might otherwise have remained domestic concerns. Ekpa's speech takes an interesting turn when he discusses international figures, particularly President Donald Trump and Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This internationalization of the